Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
God damn it, I didn't take the damn mic off. Hello. I just had a rip-roaring intro, and you missed it. Damn it. Damn, you can never go home again. I know we've been saying we won't go back, but I got to go back and try to remember what it was I was saying. I was saying that Friday night comes around, and I'm sitting on my couch looking at the TV, and I'm thinking, well, what the heck am I supposed to watch? I mean, I've been forced to watch conventions all my working life, and I found them generally stultifyingly boring and stupid. And this one was must-watch television. It was entertaining. It was energizing. It was wonderful. And when it stopped on Thursday night, I was left like I am often at the end of a great television series you're watching that ends, bereft. Well, now what am I going to do? Well, we got lots of work to do. I know that much. No, that was just a brilliantly done convention, and I'll tell you what. As my brother said when I was talking to him last night, it augurs well, and I said I agree, although I don't know that I would have used the word augur. And his wife popped up on the other end. She said, "Yeah, I might have said bodes." I don't even know if I would have said bodes, but it augurs and bodes well for uh, for the next 3 months. Although we can't be feeling too giddy, we've got to really have fire in the belly and working like we are the underdogs. It is stacked against us in terms of, the electoral college and the fact that we're up against cheaters. So let's, keep ourselves, intact. But wow, great convention. And let me finish that sentence. It augurs well because stop and think about it. The Harris folks had what? A few weeks to put together this convention? A few weeks. I mean, the convention planning had to have been going on for, I can't imagine when they started, well over a year. But it was for Biden. And this was not, I mean, the fact that they turned on a dime and still, with that little time, pulled off such a well-oiled, little problem keeping, to schedule. But yeah, and let me tell you about that. Let me tell you about that. As somebody who has emceed a lot of things, there is nothing more destructive of a well-run evening than allowing people to get up and speak uh, who have not, who do not realize that they are not the center of it all. It is unbelievable. I can't tell you how many times I have watched as people get up. They've been told, just take about a minute, maybe two at the most, okay? Because we've got a lot of, just 2 minutes, okay? And 9 minutes later or 10 minutes later, they're still droning on. They're not, entertaining, and they kill it. And all those folks you saw, many of whom gave wonderful speeches, still went over the time limit. Another thing I learned, when you're a reporter and you got your microphone and you ask a question and then tilt it toward your interviewee, if the interviewee ever tries to take the mic, which they do, some will sometimes just take the mic and start, you wrestle that baby away from them with do not ever cede control of the mic. Okay, I'm off track here. Anyway, bodes well for the fact that we've got this truncated period now, and thank God we do, between now and election day, because her team is clearly pretty damn good at doing really well in a shortened period of time. It also shows us how absolutely absurd and I think ultimately detrimental to our political system that the way we do it makes a presidential election last more than a year. It's nuts and it's enervating, not only for the candidates, but also for the would-be voters who either tune out before the election or barely tune in before the election. Did that make sense? And I wish we could somehow get a handle on that. These early primaries need to be less early. We just need to stop. And it also allows for a great deal of mischief on the part of media who run out of stories to tell. They start covering candidates, in New Hampshire, in Iowa. And by even before they're out of Iowa and New Hampshire, they're already bored out of their minds by whatever message the candidate's trying to put forward. And so they stop reporting on that and start, digging around for other stuff. And that's where the mischief starts to happen. And that's where voters who aren't, watching with bated breath from the Iowa caucuses on, voters tuning in September, October, wanting to know exactly what these candidates stand for. The media's moved so beyond that by now. They're doing personalities, they're doing horse race, they're doing poll numbers, they're digging dirt, they're whatever. So beware. So I understand there was this wrinkle in the campaign, this guy that was running on a third party ticket. What party was that? Did they have a name? he had a name. That's all he had. He had a familiar name, Robert F. Kennedy, even Jr. Although, wouldn't he be the third? No, he wasn't Jr. The first one was Robert F. Kennedy. He wasn't Jr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I always think of his dad as Junior just because he was to his big brother. What a jeez, man! Wow, what a weirdo. And I say that without intending to do the weird thing. I mean, just what an effing weirdo that guy is. From barbecued dogs to pulling dead bears off roads and planting them in Central Park to worms in his friggin' brain. I mean, my God. Anyway, a few things I saw that I'll just share with you about it because I don't want to waste much time on him. You know the guy Kurt Anderson? You often hear him on NPR. I don't know exactly how to. A smart cookie. Harvard, of course, educated. He wrote a piece. I don't know where I read it. I'm thinking the Atlantic, but I'm not sure. And he said he was loath to tell this story, but since Robert, through his weight behind Donald Trump, Kurt Anderson thought, well, now's the time. So he says this, in part. Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy, as I've always referred to Robert Kennedy Jr., since we met freshman year at Harvard, Donald Trump and Bobby have always had many features in common. Both are entitled playboy sons of Northeastern wealth. Both, and here ripping off Michelle Obama's words, were afforded the grace of failing forward. They were both misbehaving, underachieving adolescents who still got admitted to Harvard or Ivy League colleges, thanks to, again, the affirmative action of generational wealth. Both were reckless, lifelong adolescents. I guess rather than were, we should say are. Reckless, lifelong adolescents. Both attention-craving philanderers and liars. And finally, they're both jerks. And then Kurt Anderson said, and man, if you bothered listening to Kennedy's hour-long speech in which he said his campaign was ending and he was endorsing Donald Trump, I did not. He said that was as meandering and filled with lies as a Trump speech. They're very, very much alike. And then Anderson says, on the topic of reckless adolescence and entitlement, I've got a Bobby Kennedy anecdote to tell. And then he tells it. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but first you have to know that by the time Kennedy got to Harvard, he already had some brushes with the law and with drugs. He had used heroin from 15 years of age to 29. So he was still using when he was at Harvard. He finally quit when he was arrested after he OD'd on a flight from Minneapolis to the Black Hills, and the cops in South Dakota, when he landed, found him carrying heroin. Of course, being a child privilege, he didn't serve any jail time. He got probation. And he's made a point of talking about his history of addiction. It's part of the narrative he's shared when he's giving his incomprehensible rambling speeches. Now, Kurt Anderson, who's telling the story, he got to Harvard coming from Nebraska, and he said, yeah, I'd smoked some pot and I even dropped some acid before I got to Harvard in 72. And sometime there, I tried a little Coke. For those of you who never did any of these things, I hope you've gotten over just your your astonishment at the amount of drugs that very successful people tried, and often don't regret having tried. There's a reason people take these drugs. It's not that it makes you feel bad. It makes you feel sometimes wonderful. Not that I'm pushing them. So he said, I decided sometime during my freshman year, I tried Coke and I really liked it, and decided to try to get a gram of Coke for myself. And a friend at Harvard told me there was a kid in our class who was selling it. Well, you know where this is going. And so, yeah, he went to Kennedy's room. Kennedy put some lines out for him, gave him this plastic straw, which he snorted the stuff up with. And then he sold him a gram for a lot of more money than it was worth. And then Kurt Anderson left. And the next thing you know is Kennedy is calling him up enraged. You took my straw, he said. You know, straws are really hard to find. Anyway, Kurt Anderson thought this was very odd, and he did bring the straw back, and Kennedy was screaming at him and glowering at him and whatever. He's weird. So I just wanted to tell, Anderson wanted to tell this story, and he thought it was also important to point out that Kennedy, now working to make Trump the president, that he should know that Trump gave a speech in which he said about drug dealers, these are terrible people, and we have to get tough on them, because if we don't get tough on them, we're wasting our time. And that toughness includes the death penalty. We're going to solve this problem. So, yeah, I wonder if Kurt Anderson is suggesting that Trump would execute his latest endorsee, endorser, excuse me. Anyway, so there was that. And what else do I have on Kennedy? And then I'm not going to mention his name again. His own brother, Max, it's his younger brother, wrote a piece in the Los Angeles Times which just rips him apart, limb from limb. And let me see, ends thusly. The truth is essential to democracy, and truth is essential inside a family too. For all of these reasons, the truth requires me to set the record clear. I love Bobby, but I hate what he's doing. It is worse than disappointment. We are in mourning. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I would be motivated to write something of this nature. With a heavy heart, I am today asking my fellow Americans to do what will honor our father the most, ignore Bobby, and support Kamala Harris and the Democrats. It's what is best for our country. Okay, And then there's this line, which I really like, from Maureen Dowd, saying, this is really weird, because Trump just loves being embraced by a Kennedy. He loves that aura. But she says the former president's motto is not ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. His motto is more like ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for me, which would be about absolutely correct. So yeah, and during his absolutely incoherent speech, which I didn't listen to but read enough of, uh, Kennedy said this, and this alone tells you all you need to know. He said that Trump would protect us from totalitarianism. Can't make it up. You can't make it up. Nope. It's odd. And another thing that he's like Trump in, they're both just constantly me, 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 and they're transactional. He tried to get Harris to agree to give him a big, maybe a cabinet level position for his endorsement. She didn't even answer the call. He did the same with Trump. Trump, of course, answered the call. And so these two only do transactional things. What's in it for me? Very much like each other. A match made in heaven. There's a number of things I want to share with you. This always happens when Monday show rolls around. I've, been reading stuff for 4 days since last we spoke, and I'm knee deep in stuff. I want to share thoughts or little tidbits. Here's a tidbit or two. Okay, here's one. These will come in no specific order. They make no sense. There is no segue one to the other unless I really, really stretch. We'll see. But this one I just found funny. This goes out to you sports fans, specifically hockey fans. It was in the New York Times sports section, and it's this. I mean, apropos of absolutely nothing, but just a strange little piece of information. In 1981 and 82, in the drafts, the NHL draft, 3 defensemen named Steve Smith were taken. Not a big deal, but it is a little odd. It's a common name, I suppose. But 3 defensemen named Steve Smith were taken by various teams, 3 teams, in 80 and 81, or 81 and 82. And the more incredible part of that little tidbit is, to this day and prior, there has never been another Steve Smith drafted in the NHL. The only Steve Smiths were drafted in those 2 years. I'm just saying. And I don't know what the odds of that kind of thing happening. Here's another one. What are the odds? The great Phil Esposito scored on his birthday, not just scored his 50th goal of the season on his birthday 3 times in 4 years. Yeah. It's my birthday. So, yeah. And the thing is, his birthday's in February. And that is really early in the season to be scoring a 50th goal. But he did it, as I said, 3 times in 4 years. That'd be 71, 72. You skip 73 for some reason, and then 74. Just wanted to throw those at you because they tickled me a bit. Here's another thing that I feel like, duh, what? I didn't know. One of the, I thought, extraordinary things about that convention was the how female-centric it was. You know, and I don't think they made a well, I don't know. I mean, Kamala, her sister, Michelle, those three women all started, I think, their speeches talking about the most important person in their lives who formed them, and it was their mothers. Not to diss their fathers, but their mothers. And there was a lot of that kind of storytelling of the strength of women just being told in a, you know, in a not a braggadocio way, but such a heartfelt way. And it was one of the things, one of the threads that seemed to go throughout that I found so moving. But speaking of her father, I mean, it was so sad, and it was clear that she and her sister are so sad at their mother not seeing uh, this moment. Um, but because I never hear about the father, I thought he was dead. I don't know why I thought he was dead because I never heard about him. I just assumed he was dead. Well, he ain't. So her father, Kamala's father, I'm assuming was maybe watching and did see his daughter uh, accepting the nomination. Um, and there's something very sad about that. She says they're not estranged, but they're not close. He is very private and would no more show up. So, I mean, if your daughter's there, you got to figure, you'd be there, but he's not. He's not part of the story. He's 88 years old, and he is a professor emeritus in economics at Stanford. And with all that family you saw around her, his absence was striking now that I realized he's alive. She has never dissed him at all. He wrote an essay once in which he did speak, and I don't know how long ago this was, I mean, maybe 8 years ago or something. He did write an essay, one of the few times he talked about his children. And he talked about taking them back to Jamaica. They went often to Jamaica. He wanted them to know their roots there. And there was a mountain that, as a boy, he had climbed, and it's a tough trek up that mountain. And he wrote of in 1970 taking Kamala and Maya, his daughters, to that mountain called Orange Hill, and watching Kamala attack the mountain. And I'll quote him now: Kamala, ever the adventurous and assertive one, suddenly broke from the pack, leaving behind Maya, the more cautious one, and took off like a gazelle in the Serengeti, leaping over rocks and shrubs and fallen branches in utter joy and unleashed curiosity to explore that enticing terrain. Well, that's something I just wanted to share, and I don't know, something sad to me about his absence. Something very sad. Oh, gotta share this. Of all the things I read, and I'm sorry, I am going to be reading more to you. Of all the things I read since last we spoke, and I read some good stuff. I read a book. I'm starting another, by the way, the author of which will be on the show. It's called Behind the Yoy, and it is the life of Myron Cope, written by his daughter and Dan Joseph. And I've just started, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. But this thing I've read about a man whose life I was vaguely aware of. I recall mentioning him once or twice in the gazillions of hours I babbled in front of microphones, but he's not somebody who is widely, I think, known. Uh, he was the president of a nation. He is now the former president of a nation. The nation is a small country, Uruguay, or not sure. And his name is Jose Mujica. And everybody calls him what? They don't call him Jose. What do they call him? Pepe. So this guy is so beloved in that country. And there's a reason he's beloved. Because he made that country into one of the world's healthiest democracies. That's not something you could say about our country right now, right? We are, in fact, and acknowledged as an unhealthy democracy. You want a healthy one? Pepe's Uruguay. It is regularly lauded for the strength of its democratic institutions, and get this, the civility of its politics. Two things that would not be said of the United States of America right now, and that is the exact reason we are now a wobbly democracy, not a healthy one. And this man is the reason. When he took power, well, he won it, he was elected, but he had spent his time before that fighting a demagogic government there. He had landed himself in prison. He had been tortured. He had been abused. He was in prison for, I believe, 13 years of his life. He met his wife in prison. They were both good troublemakers. And they're still together. And so when the dictatorship that had imprisoned and tortured them ended in 1985, they were released, and their amazing political story began. He never moved into the mansion that the president's supposed to live in. He stayed with his wife on this tin-roofed little chrysanthemum farm. Can you imagine? He farms chrysanthemums. His farm was outside the capital, Montevideo, and they continued to tend to their garden and to sell their flowers at markets in the capital city. Just an amazing person, amazing people, an amazing story. They're living, and today, you want to see him today? He with her are in that tiny tin-roofed home with their three-legged dog. He's dying. It's why I'm telling you this, because a reporter who had covered him throughout his life, knowing he was dying, asked if he could come to his home and interview him. And Pepe said, yes, of course. And I'm just going to share some of this. We're told that he's weak and barely eating. He has esophageal cancer. And the first thing he said to the reporter is, "You're talking to a strange old man. I really don't fit in today's world." Well, I'd say the same thing too. I don't. But the reporter noted he said that, leaning in to look at me closely, a glisten in his eye. I mean, this guy is just filled with life and love. But unprompted, he also said, "I think humanity, as it's going, is doomed." And the reporter says, "Why do you say that?" He says, "We waste time. We waste time uselessly. We make garbage, and we work in pain. For what? You're only free when you escape the law of necessity. When you spend the time of your life in what you desire. If your needs multiply, you spend your life covering those needs. And humans can create infinite needs. The market dominates us, and it robs us of our lives. I mean, this is something we know, but few of us push back. He has pushed back all his life. It's why he didn't need a bigger home. Everything he needs is in that little tin-roofed farmhouse. And when you need stuff all the time, when you fall for the marketers, lure, you become imprisoned. He goes on, Pepe. Humanity needs to work less, have more free time, and be more grounded. Why so much garbage? Why do you have to get a new car? Why do you have to get a new refrigerator? There is only one life, and it ends. You have to give meaning to it. Fight for happiness, not just wealth. So the reporter says, "But do you think humanity could change?" Pepe says it could, but the market, see, he sees the market as the enemy, but the market is very strong. It has generated a subliminal culture that dominates us. It's unconscious. It has made us voracious consumers. We live to buy. We work to buy. And we live to pay. We're screwed up. And the reporter says, gosh, you seem so bummed out, so pessimistic, but your speeches are always so filled with hope. And Pepe says, well, because life is beautiful. I love it. And I'm losing it because it's my time to leave. Unlike other animals, man has the ability to find a purpose or not. If you don't find it, the market will have you paying bills the rest of your life. If you do find your purpose, you will have something to live for. Okay. He said, when I was president, I once went to Germany and they put me in a Mercedes Benz. The door weighed about 3,000 kilos. They put 40 motorcycles in front and another 40 in back. I was ashamed. We have a house for the president. It's 4 stories. To have a cup of tea, you have to walk 3 blocks. Useless. They should make it into a high school. He goes on to say, the greatest invention of man? The book. The book is the greatest invention. And it's a shame that people read so little. They don't have time. And then he talks about the phones. Well, he says, when I'm in the field working on the tractor, sometimes I stop to see how a little bird constructs its nest. He was born with the program. He's already an architect. Nobody taught him. I admire nature. I almost have a sort of pantheism. The ants, they're the true communists out there. They are much older than us and they will outlive us. All colony beings are very strong. And then the reporter gets him back, but so telephones, these phones, what are you? It's not the phone's fault, says Pepe. We're the ones who aren't ready. We make disastrous use of it. Children walk around with a university in their pockets. That's wonderful. But we have advanced more in technology than in values. The children are forgetting that it is direct communication that is irreplaceable. We need to touch each other. We are not robotic. We are emotional beings. We think we decide things with our heads, but many times the head finds the arguments to justify the decisions we already made by our gut. We're not as aware as we seem. Okay, and just one more thing. I'm sorry, I am so in love with this man. I will so mourn his absence from this world. He has said in the past that he doesn't believe in God. And the reporter says, how about now, as you're dying? And Pepe said this, 60% of humanity believes in something, and that must be respected. There are questions without answers. What's the meaning of life? Where do we come from? Where are we going? We don't easily accept the fact that we are an ant in the infinity of the universe. We need the hope of God because we would like to live. He's asked, do you have some kind of God? And he says, no. I greatly respect people who believe. It's like a consolation when faced with the idea of death. Because the contradiction of life is that it is a biological program designed to struggle to live. But from the moment that program starts, you're condemned to die. We are all interdependent. We couldn't live without the biota in our intestines. We depend on a number of bugs that we don't even see. Life is a chain and it is so full of mysteries. I hope human life will be prolonged, but I am worried. There are a lot of crazy people. There is a lot of fanaticism. We should be building windmills, yet we spend on weapons. That is Pepe, Jose Mujica, former president of Uruguay. And I have to tell you, of all the things I have read, and man, I've read a lot in the last 4 days, that was, to me, by far, most moving, most helpful, most beautiful. Speaking of something beautiful, too. Did any of you see and or read, if you did, a piece that Tina Brown wrote in, I think, the New York Times, on Saturday. Tina Brown I'm going to blank, was the editor of what? Vogue? Of, no, GQ, of Cosmopolitan. What was she? She was a big editor. Condé Nast Publications. I don't know. Smart Brit. And she's an author as well. And she wrote an op-ed after watching the Democratic convention, and the thing that she was most moved by was the sight of Tim Walz's 17-year-old son, Gus, leaping to his feet, tears running down his face, a hand to his heart, and clearly saying, you didn't have to be much of a lip reader to see what he was saying, that's my dad. That's my dad. Now, that, by the way, was, of course, ridiculed by people in MAGA land, including Ann Coulter. Tina Brown, when she saw Gus, said, as the mother of Georgie, my 38-year-old on the spectrum son who still lives with me, I recognize Gus immediately as one of ours. A sweet, unfiltered, slightly bewildered-looking young man who wasn't quite sure what was expected of him in this epic moment. And she goes on to explain that now we know he has what is called a nonverbal learning disorder, ADHD, and an anxiety disorder. And his dad says It's his secret power. It makes him hyper aware and brilliant. Yeah, I just read a book in which there was a character exactly like that, who was the moral center of the story, even though he was seen as, yeah, what we used to call retarded. Yeah. And Tina Brown goes on to say when she heard that the Walzes think of Gus as brilliant, as hyper aware, she says, I know exactly what they mean. Because one of the joys of my life in the social churn of New York, and she's living it at the very top, is living with Georgie, whose inability to read the room makes him incapable of telling anything but the truth. Once, as my husband, Harry Evans, her late husband, Harry Evans, and I left a pretentious Hamptons social gathering, Georgie, who was with us, told the host sunnily, thank you very much. No one spoke to me really, so it was a very boring evening. The food was okay. I doubt I will come again. And Tina says when they got in the car, her husband said to Georgie, I have never been prouder of you in my life. And then she talks about she was doing a book signing, and Anta Wintour, the doyen of everything fashionable, the one who's always in sunglasses with her hair in the just so bob, the editor of Vogue, right? She's the editor of Vogue. Her son Georgie to, walked up to Anna Wintour and said, are you Camilla Parker Bowles? Which, I mean, you have to love it because it would have pissed off Anna Wintour so much. How dare you think I look like that woman? And here, one more thing that Tina shares about her son. He was once doing some intake for some program and he was being interviewed by a therapist. I said he was 38 years old now. And the therapist said to him, Georgie, has anyone ever molested you? And his response was, unfortunately not. So Tina Brown says, Georgie teaches me every day how much we depend on social lies to make the world go round. And then she talks about how difficult the life of somebody like Georgie can be because of the world they have to go around in, because of the sons of bitches like Donald Trump who make fun of people with disabilities, because of the bullies. And she says that, having friendly, forgiving workplaces to go to for these people is critical. Often their only taste of community and what makes them such reliable employees. And she says, the work from home movement has been a killer for them. Says one of my son's quirks is that he likes to wear bandanas and nail polish and tends to say so in the first 5 minutes of any job interview. And more often than not, he's told, well, no, that would not be appropriate. But see, being inappropriate is the very definition of Georgie's condition. and for us, his family, his most cherished trait. So she then has an ask of Tim Walz. If Harris Walz wins, I hope that the voiceless community of which I am a part will see Coach Walz take on this as and become an advocate for us. And she addresses him and says, "You have been such an inspiring role model to children all your life, and were caring enough to offer your own credibility to become the faculty advisor of a new high school gay-straight alliance. I urge you to please make this your cause." I was moved by that as well. And yeah, how vice presidents always have causes. The first ladies always have causes. Well, the first gentleman, I mean, no, oh no, oh yeah, wait, he's not. I'm mixing up my guys. I'm thinking of Doug Emhoff. Okay. Um, Dear Lord, I have to tell you, now that the weather's heating up again, um, weather often is the lead story on network newscasts now, isn't it? I mean, if you watch them, it's a fire, it's a flood, it's whatever, temperatures off the charts, it's the weather is the big story. There was an obituary today, let me find it, of a reporter, Peter Dykstra, who was worked for CNN as their climate reporter. He unfortunately died at the age of 67. But he once wrote the biggest climate denier in the Senate, James Inhofe of Oklahoma. He wrote him a letter saying, "How about you agree to be interviewed by me when you turn 100? And the question on the table will be, okay, which of us was right and which of us was wrong about global warming?" And Inhofe replied through a spokesperson, "Sure. How is 10 a.m. Friday, November 17th, 2034? And Dykstra said, "Perfect." Well, they're both dead now. They died within weeks of each other. But there is no doubt that Dykstra would have won. And, just today I read there was a hiker swept away near the Grand Canyon by a flash flood. There's some people trapped in an ice cave in Iceland when a part of the glacier that they were exploring caved into their cave. Some people have been rescued, not so sure about these. I'm thinking one was already killed. You read about tourists in Greece being found dead after they'd gone off on hikes, uh, just unaware of how blazingly hot it has become there. And these are stories that every day you read. And I was thinking of that stupid ad for margarine. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. I don't know what humanity is thinking by treating nature as cruelly as we have and are, by despoiling her. But she will have the final say. She is a bigger adversary. Unfortunately, it's come to that we would want. She'll pick us off one by one, like these stories, or she'll just take us out. As Pepe said, I don't know. I don't know. We might be doomed. And on that happy note, I finish this edition of Lynn Cullen, very much alive, and send you on your way. I'm going on mine, and I'll see you tomorrow, and Susan should be here. Okay? Thank you, and
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.